Hello my lovely crafty monkeys, it's Janet Clare here, and we are talking English paper piecing, which is a really lovely traditional hand sewing technique, and it is calming, meditative. You get to play with little scraps of fabric. It's very soothing and it's fun, and it gives you a beautiful result. Here is the block that I've made. It is called Tumbling blocks, and you can see why, because the little stacks of 3D cubes on top of each other, and it relies on a good range of fabrics, 3 tonal fabrics, pale, a medium and a dark, and we'll talk about that a bit later. As I say, hand sewing over paper templates, English paper piecing. So you need to print out your paper templates, you'll get them in the notes, on a nice weight of card paper stock, not that thick, not that thin, okay? And you're going to make individual units like this, and it's really lovely. Lots of hand sewing, very good for your colour and tonal practice, and a really nice little winter's evening project for you. So ready to get started. So first thing you need to do is go through your stash and choose yourself your 3 tones of fabric that you need to make the tumbling block illusion. So it's supposed to look like a cube, and you need pale, medium and dark fabric, and of course the biggest choice I've got is blue because I love blues, so I've got lots and lots. The wider range of prints and slight variations in tones you have, then your finished block is going to be really more interesting. It's going to be nicer to look at. If you've only got 3 tones of fabric, you can still make it work. It will be very striking, but this will be scrappier look is my favorite. They all need to be the same weight, so if you can all got cotton or whatever, just make sure they're consistent weight. You don't want to go from a velvet to something very thin like a silk. And you can use the front of your print and the reverse of your print as well. So if that helps you get a wider tonal range, then do that. If you are struggling to see the tonal variations, then you can put your camera into grayscale and take a photograph, and then you'll see very clearly the 3 shades of grey, and that will help you a lot. Okay, so there's lots of ways of doing this. I do this the lowest tech, easiest way, very traditional. You're going to take your diamond templates, which you've cut out. You need 3 for each of the tumbling blocks, and I just lay it on the fabric, cut it out very roughly all round. I'm not using a rotary cutter. I'm not measuring 1/4 inch seam allowances. I'm just doing it very rough. You do need enough seam allowance to fold it nice and tightly over each paper template so that you can stitch it down. You can use one of these glue pens if you want. Very simple, do exactly what they say. Just glue a line, fold the thing over. They're obviously not very good for the environment. I don't think they're recyclable. I don't know what the glue does to your fabric long term, so I still prefer to use thread. Very traditional. You're going to take your template, take your fabric, and then this is the right side. You're just going to fold it over, score it with your finger. Take quite a solid needle, so not your flimsiest finest needle. Thread it up with contrasting thread, and you're just going to go from the back all the way through the template. So you want to have printed your templates out on something that's firm enough to hold its shape, but not so heavy that you can't sew through it. Don't worry, the first edge is always going to look a bit baggy, and it looks like it's not going to hold in place, but just do one edge at a time and get it as neat as you can. Okay, and then when we're coming up to this corner here, you're going to fold it over, score it, and you're just going to make a little ear there, technical term. Okay, so it's really this point that we need to focus on, because that is where the shapes tessellate. And that's the area that you want to be really solidly sewn. So I will put a couple of stitches in there. This takes seconds to unpick, so it's all part of the process. It's actually quite nice. Just fold it over, keep going. So you're going to do that all the way round the 4, and what you've got to do is make sure that your fabric is firmly attached to your shape, your template, but isn't starting to sort of bend. Okay, so keep it nice and flat. Here's one, just like Blue Peter. Here's one that I finished earlier. Okay, so you can see I've got ears. I'll show you what to do with those in a minute. Okay, nice shape. And the beauty of English paper piecing is you get the accuracy is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. You get to play with all your fabrics. So we've done a lot of sewing fabric to card now to paper, and you should have a good supply of diamonds covered in fabric, pale, medium and dark, and this is the effect that we're going for. This is a tumbling block. These are finished. Okay, so we're going to sew these little units together. So I've chosen 3 fabrics, and now we are ready. Now we're going to choose a different type of needle for this stage. It's very small, it's very sharp, and it's about as fine a needle as I can bear to thread. So you'll get smaller stitches. It just gives you smaller stitches, that's all it is. So choose the one that you're comfortable sewing with. Don't make it an ordeal, but the smaller and finer the better. Single strand of thread, contrast, matching, and a little knot in the end. And the same as usual, it's going to be pretty sides together. Pretty sides together. We're going to butt the edges up. We're going to make sure no sort of threads. Those tacking threads, so we're going to remove them. Okay, so it's not too much of an issue where they are. And what you're doing, you're just trying to put the shapes exactly on top of each other, as neat as you can. And again, got to pay very close attention to the beginning and the ending of them. And then we're just going to take a couple of strands of fabric, a couple of threads, the others, and pull the needle through. Stop at the knot, and then you're going to do a stitch in exactly the same place and pull it through, but not all the way. And then we're going to put the needle through the loop, and that's just forming a little double knot. And I can just get that tacking thread out of the way. There you go. Now then, it is a couple of threads from one piece, a couple of threads from the other side. Very small, dainty little stitches that you're trying to hide. Okay, and what you'll find is you'll get into a little rhythm. When you first start, you'll find yourself catching the paper, but you're going to just skim the paper with your needle. Catch little threads here. I'm being all fingers and thumbs because I'm on camera. It's a little further away from my face than it would normally be when I was sewing it. I'd have it closer. But you're just going to catch a little thread, little threads. You're going to stitch all the way along, just like that. And then when you open it out, you will have them very firmly attached. Won't see your stitches. Now, if you can't hide your stitches, you're going to want to make them worth looking at. So keep them consistently spaced apart, keep them nice and small, or use a contrasting thread and really make the feature of them. It's entirely up to you. So you're going to sew all the way up to the end, put the next piece in. Now, to put the final piece in, you may find that you need to fold your template. Hold on, let me get this needle here. So imagine we're putting this one in here. This side is easy. We will just sew from there to there. And then that is secure there. We have to sew from here to here, right sides together. What you'll find is you're going to have to bend. You're going to have to fold your template. So don't worry about that. You can fold it out of the way and just carry on sewing. It won't do it any harm. Won't do any harm at all. It's a piece of card. Okay? And that will sew. So if you need to fold your templates, then that's what you can do. And all you're going to do is make lots and lots of tumbling block units. Now then, you will eventually get to a piece that looks like this, which is lovely. It does take a while, but they're very happy time spent sewing, so don't worry about that. What you can do is, once you've got a piece like this one with the fish, once you've got a piece that's completely sewn in, surrounded, you can remove this paper here, and that makes the sewing easier. It's easier for you to sew, and it also means that you can reduce the number of templates you've got, so you can start reusing them. You can reuse these papers over and over again. They just get holes in, but until they've got sort of bent corners, it doesn't matter. So you can see, you can just completely remove that. Okay, sew it together. Now then, we are making our blocks oversized. So our finished quilt block, if you want to put it in a quilt, you need it to be 12 inches finished, so 12.5 inches with the seam allowance. And there's a couple of approaches you can do with this. You can either keep making it all oversized, just finished with complete blocks like this. I would put this one in here. This is a medium and this is a dark. Okay, you can keep putting that in there if you want, and then when it comes to getting your quilt block into a quilt, you then just would cut off the seam allowance, the excess that you don't need, or you can start by cutting one of your templates down. So I would need here, this pail here, I may only need half of a diamond, and I could cut the paper template down and then sew the fabric onto that. Is entirely up to you, but our finished piece that we're making here comes out to about 12.75 of an inch, and so you have got excess that you don't need, and it's entirely up to you what you do. It's probably just as easy to sew complete units in, press it all out, and then trim down as and when you need to. So there you go. That is English paper piecing. It's very relaxing, very soothing. You get pinpoint accuracy, and it's just a beautiful use of all your scraps. So there we are, after many hours of sewing, all very nice hours, I have to say. I have my finished tumbling blocks, and you can see what a beautiful 3D effect it is. And I've taken out most of the papers. As you can see, this is what I was talking about earlier. You see here, I just used half of the diamond, so a triangle, and here's the full one. There's not a lot of difference in the sewing time. Obviously, it gives you a clearer idea of where the edges are if you use half of a block. And here, I've got half of these really. I didn't cut them that way at all. And up here, you needed 2 triangles to form this half of the tumbling blocks. So all the papers are out. So one more to go. You just literally unpick your stitches. Doesn't take long at all. And then everything will need a good press. And if you are making this for a quilt block, if you're making a sampler quilt, everything needs a really good press, and then you need to trim it to 12.5 inches. If, however, you want to make it into a cushion or use it for a bag front or whatever, then just leave it this size and have fun with it and see what else you can make. Otherwise, the next step is to press it and trim it to 12.5 inches square, and that is your finished tumbling blocks quilt.